Hi, friends. It's Derek here, who's talking with Principal. So I was lying down there trying to take a nap, and all of a sudden my SI started taking over. I remember this one awful nurse from the first hospital Rachel and I went to, and how much I fucking hate her. she tried to pull some lies and bullshit on us, and I shamed her as we were leaving the hospital. I wish I had shamed her more. I was lying in bed. I couldn't sleep because I was so angry at her. What a ne'er do well that woman was. Trying to think she's going to outsmart us, too. Outsmart me. As fucking if. Trying to slide by this bullshit past us. It's like. I was lying there just tossing and turning, all furious. I wanted to drive down to Queen of the Valley and find that woman in the emergency room and yell at her some more. So I had to start a live stream because obviously I couldn't sleep while wanting to put my foot up ass, the urgent need to do that when I'm upset. Somebody's ass needs to be the recipient of my foot. And right now it's that red-haired nurse from Queen of the Valley. The short red-haired nurse. I mean, short red hair. Not she wasn't short, but she had short red hair. Oh, what a bitch that woman was. What a horrible, horrible bitch. I'm going to pull a tarot card for that horrible woman. I hope she gets a bad one. Okay, here we go. Pulling a tarot for the horrible nurse. What's she get? 6 Pentacles. 6 of Pentacles. Let's see. Happy atmosphere. Unfortunate. I do not wish well upon that horrible nurse. So let's pull a card for Richello and Isaiah Root, who are probably hungover this morning, I'm guessing. King of Wands. Nice. Hey, I pulled you a card. I just pulled you a card. You guys got the King of Wands. I think I'll pull my Rachel a card. Two rods, 2 wands. Let's see what the 2 of Wands says. Sign of achievement in business and plans. All right. Now let's pull a card for little old me. Eight of Swords. Unable to make any decision, you feel very restricted. You've experienced hurt or anxiety. Your time will come in the spring of new opportunity. Well, I do feel in a bit of a holding pattern at the moment while my dad continues to go back and forth about what we're doing here, when we're starting with mom in there and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely feel like I'm in a bit of a holding pattern during that. My dad today was saying we're going to push back the start date a day or two. It's like, Dad, what are you doing? Why don't you just get a little bit of NI, please? Just a smidge. It's like 4 grams worth of NI. I want my dad to roll 4 grams of NI in a blunt and smoke it. So usually if I'm mad in the morning, it's because I've woken up mad. A lot of times I'll wake up mad. I'll wake up mad at the cops on Taylor's behalf. In this instance, I didn't wake up mad though. I got up, I did a couple things, and then I live streamed. No, I didn't. This is the first live stream this morning, huh? No, this is the second live stream this morning. Yeah, it's the second live stream already this morning. So, I got my mom up and dressed and everything, and came out here to lie down for a nap and started feeling mad with that nurse. So then, of course, I had to live stream because I couldn't sleep because I was mad about the nurse. Rachel texted me this morning basically that she disagrees with me about my position on abortion. And but she she's mostly worried that I think she needs to agree with me. I don't think so at all. I don't give a fuck what politics are. Yeah, Nurse Ratchet was causing me to not be able to take a nap because I was fuming about her. And it's like a lot of people, this is the sort of thing that people sometimes fight about, Yeah. It's like I have my position on what wins the arguments. But what wins the arguments is not necessarily always the best policy choice. And that's where TE comes in. It's like that's where we have to respect TE. I know this much that it's not a good area for me to be attempting to make policy changes. It's just too hot button, too emotional, whatever. It's not a priority of mine as a consequence politically. And I think that that's smart and reasonable. But I mean, a lot of people will just say about that in and of itself, well, that invalidates you as a candidate for me because it's politically important to me. So, that's why those wedge issues exist, because the political forces that want to exploit them can do so. MXX oil stock, huh? I'll mention it. My dad, as far as I can tell, mostly delegates his investment decisions to his investment guy, Ron Yee. We've got this guy that it's like my grandma had a financial planner guy, and my parents had the same financial planner guy, and then when that guy retired, he passed on his clients to this new guy, Ron Yee, and my dad's been investing through him for decades now. And as far as I know, I don't think my dad makes any real investment decisions. Well, thanks, Winston's mom. That's nice to hear. Um, the I think about an ESTJ approach to investment is it's like, well, they're NI-polar. They kind of know they're NI-polar, so they want to delegate everything to an expert, And Ron, my dad always says, Ron, he's been very good to us. Well, I mean, you've been paying him, Dad. We're his client. Just because it's worked. I mean, the Dow hit 29,000 the other day. And my dad's been investing in long-term, safe growth things for decades. So, I mean, obviously, the ESTJs get some things right. It's like, it's funny though, when the Dow's up higher, my dad feels richer. And when it goes down, when it takes a hit, he feels poorer, even though it's just paper gains and losses. I mean, the thing is, my dad used to be a little bit more into real estate as well. Like, we were landlords. I spent my childhood painting, cleaning, all that kind of stupid shit that you have to do to be landlords. It's like people move out and you got to go in there and repaint the place. Steam clean the carpets, shit like that. It was very few. I didn't have, in my opinion, at the time as a child, I was not afforded enough free days. Like, I needed my Saturdays to be available to do whatever I felt like doing. I didn't want to have to go up to the high desert to paint an apartment building. But, that was my childhood. I had to do that shit all the time. It was annoying, but it's like, whatever. You got to do what you got to do, And then the thing is, I did have actually plenty of playtime. I didn't really have anything to complain about, but I complained anyway, My dad sold our last rental just about a year ago. We had a duplex or something like that, and it was a fourplex, and Bullhead City, Arizona, across the river from Laughlin, Nevada. Eric, you do not really like water either. It makes you a Taurus, like grounded earth creature. Well, I don't like the beach. I don't dislike water. I like water. I like to go fishing. I like fresh water. I like lakes and rivers. And I have an aquarium filled with water. It's got some fish in it. I'm not sure there's really a similarity, Theos or Venus. Oh, cool. Well, that's the thing. Well, we were talking initially about me being mad at this nurse that I encountered at one hospital I went to with Rachel, and how she was she was just being awful, and she didn't like me at all because, of course, I was just like, hell no, better knock that shit off, woman. It's like people who are comfortable in their autocratic bullshit cannot stand me because I am the devil as far as they're concerned. I get right up into their autocratic bullshit and dismantle it immediately. I'm sure the parents would love that. Mom, hey, I gave your kid a free puppy. Now, granted, a guppy is not quite like a puppy. A guppy is the puppy of fish, though. I think it's fair to say. Peace and or victory to you too, Dark Phoenix. Because I move towards conflict to solve issues that's innate within you. No, I mean, that's absolutely not the case. I deal with that kind of problem confrontationally, right? Somebody has not been confronted enough and put in her place adequately. In other words, she thinks she's all fucking high and mighty or whatever. Well, that's exactly the sort of thing I need to be put there. That's why I'm put on earth in some part. It's like to take those fucking people down. And no way. No, you will not pull that shit around me. But that's not how I resolve conflicts in general. That's not a conflict. That's a problem with a person that I can see. There's a problem with this person. They need to be fucking shamed, Okay, so Fate Wind. I discussed this a little bit in a video last night. It's absolutely true. You're absolutely right that there is variation within ENTPs and within different types. And it's absolutely okay for you to taxonomically say, let's divide those groups arbitrarily into subgroups. Or to point out that maybe the variations are from some other element that's not covered by cognitive functions, like Enneagram. It is not okay to misuse cognitive functions and think that because there's variation within a type, it's necessarily because of variations within the cognitive functions. That's the problem with your subtype idea, is it uses cognitive functions. If you want to subtype in a taxonomical way, in a metaphorical way, or even in an Enneagram style way, which is basically a metaphorical way, then be my guest. There's no problem with that. Just remember that it's not mechanically determined. Absolutely, they need to be shamed. People like that nurse need to be shamed because they're too big for their fucking britches. That's why. Nobody's going to be too big for their britches around me. Fuck no. So you might be right, Big Win, that I'm the same subtype as George Carlin. Provided you acknowledge that the subtype distinctions you're making are fundamentally either taxonomical and arbitrary or not related to cognitive functions. No, it's not, though, Fate Wind. That's where you're wrong. That's the problem with it. Cognitive functions are aligned the certain way they are, and it's a configuration of attentional manners. They don't have strength and weakness. There is a consideration of frequency of use. That's a consideration. But you're speaking metaphor. And that's all there is to it. No, it's not the case that has anything to do with TI and SI. It probably does have to do with the Enneagram explanation. I'm an 8. I'm 7, 8, 4. So I'm 8 in terms of my conflict response. I'm confrontational, not avoidant or withdrawn. But that had nothing to do with cognitive functions. Why is that false 19th century thinking? The whole definition of cognitive function is it's an attentional manner that is on an axis because it is necessarily the case that if one spends a certain amount of frequency or a certain frequency of attending via one manner, that the inverse of it is necessarily not attended to or is attended to comparatively infrequently. Remember, there are a finite number of hours in the day, and attention is paid via channels. That's a configural necessity. And it's not false 19th century. I mean, like, did you just pull that sentence out of your ass? 19th century thinking? How? I mean, seriously. I know. And the fact that not all ENTPs are like me and that there is variation within the type of ENTP does not mean that variation is explained by cognitive functions. It's like you're ignoring everything I'm saying. There's no reason to conclude what you've concluded. I gotta smoke a cigarette. Fate wind is stressing me out. She's blowing her faded wind on my faded face. Stop farting on my face, fate wind. It's stressing me out. Okay, so to clarify, let me use the example I used last night in the live stream. Think about gender. There are two genders, right? A nice simple example. Two genders, male, female. Now, you might say that there are subtypes of males called left-handed and right-handed, except that's not subtypes of males. That's subtypes of people or types of people. In other words, handedness and gender are not related to each other. To say that there are two manifestations of male, left-handed and right-handed, is incorrect. It's wrong because handedness and gender are not related. Gender is measuring something that's not related to handedness. So handedness is not a subtype of gender. Same thing here. I mean, that's what DSP and the whole wrong kind of subtyping community is doing wrong. Is they're saying, okay, look, there are actually a lot of different kinds of male. There's, left-handed male, right-handed male, tall male, short male. Those aren't kinds of males. Those are kinds of people. So, the reason attentional manners can be explained with cognitive functions is because attentional manners are real things. They're ways that people be. And it really is the case that it's exclusive that you use an interested and a disinterested calculus, for example. They're not always exclusive, they're not completely exclusive, and it depends where in the stack as to how they interact with each other. So for me, an interested calculus and a disinterested calculus are fairly straightforwardly exclusive. Like I'm either considering I'm not. I'm either applying bias to my decision making or I'm not. And I should be able to know when and under what circumstances I'm doing either thing. People who are, like, for example, an INTP will better get the fact that people mean things other than what they say than I will get. That's an FI realization. It's like, well, the person said this, but they really meant this other thing. And you can tell because it's motivated by such and such feeling or whatever. Whereas I'm always like, well, you said meow, 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 so you meant meow, meow, meow. People don't say things they don't mean. It's like, what does that even mean? The words are said in order to express meanings. So why would people say things they don't mean? But that's just because I'm FI polar. It shows you how they're not really exclusive. They just seem exclusive if one is polar in one of them, Here comes Cloud's nonsense. Right on cue. INFP suck. Man, I'm Cloud. I'm going to throw a rock into the pond and watch it ripple. Sometimes are generally subjective categorization in the first place. That's what Eric is arguing. But isn't MBTI subjective in the first place? People came up with it. Well, MBTI, I don't know. I'm not talking about MBTI, okay? I'm talking about the idea, the central basic notion that people be via channels of attention. This is fairly indisputable that channels of attention are distinct from one another. I can give you examples of willfully applying a given channel of attention and how it's distinct from some other channel of attention. We can note that, for example, knowing the answer to something is different than having to figure out the answer to something. It's a different manner of attention. It's kind of indisputable. So it's as natural to taxonomy then, at least to begin with, as say families or genuses of animals are natural to taxonomy. Birds are different than reptiles. And it's not just a spectral thing. It's a matter of quality, not just degree, which is what species are. Species are things that are qualitatively different, not just different in degree, which is one of the reasons why evolution is bullshit. One of the myriad reasons. But the thing is, same too with types. The fact is, people do maintain a certain personality throughout their entire life, and that it is better explained as a process analysis than it is as an attribute possessing thing. People don't actually possess the attributes that Big Five says they do. That's a metaphor. Now, it is not the case that you could all argue almost everything is subjective, and it is not the case that this is subjective, because we can define subjective and objective in a number of different ways, potentially. But one thing we should all agree on is the distinction between objective data and subjective data. So objective data is that data which can be analyzed by everybody independently, and everybody can come to their own conclusions about it, right? Objective data and subjective data is a clear distinction that nobody should dispute. Subjective data is data that's inside of a person that cannot be accessed by anybody, okay? Now, this is the thing. Much of typology is subjective in how it's typically applied. The way I'm applying typology attempts to be as objective as possible. Yeah, I don't call myself objective personality theory, but that's the reality. Is we're talking about what an objective approach would look like. For example, I have a test, an SI polar test. If you say I'm confident this person's an ENTJ, and they actually are, they'll test positive for SI polar. Now, that sort of actual concrete test you can use to do things. It requires a lot of empirics work to actually verify everything, because we only have 3 tests, and it can only be used to verify so much before we're having to do things that don't have that concrete empirical link. So you're right, it's not perfect yet, but it's definitely objective. At least the way I'm doing it is. That doesn't mean it's definitive yet either. It's like, a lot of times it takes some time to figure out exactly how it is we're going to empirically establish everything beyond a reasonable doubt, as we did with, say, plate tectonics. It took 50, 60 years for them to realize, oh, we have a good empirical test right here. We can just look at the fault lines and see if, in fact, the expanding Earth theory is correct. The fault lines will go in like this. And if, in fact, plate tectonics are correct, they'll be all jagged and haphazard. Well, what are they? They're all jagged and haphazard. So, right. Now, granted, Ethan, your next point should be, however, we can't definitively establish ENTJ and ENFJ through any other mechanism. And that would be a fair objection. I would point out, well, we can establish the legitimacy of this mechanism by testing to see if there are ever examples of multiple polars, because that would invalidate the whole idea. And in fact, if we never encounter multiple polars in a single individual, somebody's got, say, polar SI and polar TI to test positive for them is within the range of normal human being, in other words, not mentally retarded, and tests positive for both SI polar and TI polar, well, then that would invalidate my model. Okay, so the thing is, at least I give you mechanisms by which the model can be invalidated. Do I have the answer to finally validate completely myself right now, what I'm saying? No, I don't. That doesn't make it subjective. It does make it somewhat speculative. You could accuse it of being hypothetical. But the thing is, yes, my model is hypothetical. In other words, it presents hypotheses that can be tested. Other approaches are not hypothetical. They do not present hypotheses that can be tested. They are metaphorical. That's the difference. They are not inventors. Correct. ENTPs are not inventors. That is a misconception. Inventors are TE heavy people. It's funny, like in the movies, they always give ENTPs the TE that they don't have. You know, like Iron Man. Iron Man is an ENTP with strangely magically good TE, right? Impossibly magically good TE. Rick from Rick and Morty, an ENTP with impossibly good TE that never actually would happen in the real world. So, yeah, Theo's absolutely correct about that. We don't have a lot of agency. Well, we have a lot of agency. We don't have a lot of directionality necessarily. And that comes from being FI polar. But we're highly agential in the sense that we put a lot of information on the metaphysical field. That is to say, we talk a lot. ENFPs are more inventory than ENTPs. Correct. So, yeah, I always somehow it's like annoying because the movies, TV shows, they set a bar for ENTPs that just I'll never be able to meet. It's like I'm never gonna be able to create invent physical things. I at one time at Kimberly's house, I successfully designed and implemented and put into place a thing, basically a stick to open the gate with. So it was like instead of pulling a string, I had this metal bar that I just pulled the metal bar and it opened up. I was so proud of myself. Okay, I was just like, "Wow, Eric, you really did it here." Yeah, so it's like I don't have all the empirics about it. I'm not claiming I do, and I'm saying basically until it's invalidated, because so far all the data I've collected at least doesn't invalidate it, and until it's invalidated, I'm going to continue to operate under the assumption that it's correct because there's a lot of haphazardly collected anecdotal evidence on my part suggests that it's right. Okay, if somebody else wants to do the real science work, go for it. That's not me. That ain't me. The MMN is unaffected by attention and reflects the operation of a strongly automatic mismatch direction system. Huh. I don't know what all that means. That's some fancy talk, Winston's mom. You're getting too fancy talk for me, all right? Let's keep the fancy talk down to a minimum. We regular plain speaking folk around here, all right? I don't want to hear no more ontology, no more epistemology. Show us your watch. I will show you my watch. That's right. I'm living large. I got a Timex. I don't go for no cheapo watch. I get the Timex every time. Well. You know what time it is? It's Fumara time. When it's Fumara time, when I do listen to you, do you know how I listen to you? You know how you can determine that I listen to you? I respond to exactly what it is you say. That doesn't mean I agree with you. To listen to you is to hear what you're saying and address it. That's being responsive. That's listening and responding to you. You're not listening to me because you don't respond to what I say. That's the difference between us. Anyway, you're right, Sean Ryan Barron. I've got to smoke with cheese. I do need to smoke with cheese. And so, as a consequence, I am going to ask you, all in attendance, if you don't mind, to please chat amongst yourselves for a minute. Okay? Wrist watches are not useless. Fate Wind, are you really trying to say that because I smoke weed, I'm not listening to you? That whether or not I smoke weed has something to do with my capacity to listen to you? Are you really saying that? I read everything you say and I respond to it on point. So do not tell me I'm not listening to you. What advice do you have for going into calculus 2? I have none. I have no idea. You're out of my league already. Hi, Dad.
Do you want this one?
Sure. Thanks.
You want to move your car? Or I can if you give me the keys.
Sure. The keys.
Partners are here.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I found bacon. That's beyond me. I failed trig. I didn't like it. It was boring. You subtype my dad? Sure, subtype away. What subtype is my dad? My dad has his demonstrative SE with his TE dominant, and when he wants to interact with the world, that means he interacts with TESE. He's an extrovert, so he likes to interact with the world. I would guess that calculus 2 is for squares. The hardest class in college. Okay, well, like I said, it's for squares.
He said don't bother.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Be glad when that other key comes.
Yeah. You leave for college in 30 minutes, huh? Well, what I want you to do is to learn your hardest. Okay? You just got to really learn hard. If you're having a problem with it, then the problem is you aren't learning hard enough, obviously. If you learn hard enough, you'll be fine. Again, gardeners. I tell you what I hate. I hate the gardeners. Sean Ryan Barron, that's impressive. How do ENFPs make decisions? Well, you know, that's a complicated equation, I guess. A whole bunch. Guitar, banjo, mandolin, piano, percussion, saxophone, flute, clarinet, accordion. Calculus is the branch of mathematics which helps us to understand changes between values that are related by a function. You know, I would say that the thing about cognitive functions in general is they attempt to produce, we're attempting to generate the physics of attention, basically, what you might call the real metaphysics of human being. It's a force vector, an area of fluid dynamics, so to speak, that hasn't been figured out yet. And one would imagine that it would have its own math to it, but I mean, that's just beyond me, you know. I'm just not that smart. I'm clever. There's a difference. I'm very clever and I'm very creative, but I'm not really that smart. You know, I'm effectively smart. Like, I'm smart enough for all common everyday things, you know? Politics, fine. Law, fine, no problem. But I can't handle shit like calculus and astrophysics and fluid dynamics and stuff like that. It's way too hard for me. I'm just not that kind of smart, you know? It's too much work. I in theory maybe could figure it out, but you know, right. My linguistic intelligence is extremely high. Um, but my other kinds of intelligence are, I mean, I would think that ISTPs may may very well be the ones who who produce solutions to a lot of the very tricky math problems that are have been sort of unsolved for decades, and then somebody solves them one day. That seems like an ISTP thing. I coached an ISTP in interview skills for quite some time a year or two ago, and he got a perfect score on the ACT, and he was trying to get into Harvard and stuff, but um, he had terrible interview skills. Like he had unipolar, you know. It's like there was no conversational momentum in him at all, or inertia. It's like he was a conversational rock at rest. You had to just push him forward, and then you know. But he was obviously brilliant. I mean, he was going to go to one of those number one or two in the country colleges. So it just goes to show you that IQ is a pretty weak measure of intelligence in a meaningful sense, because intelligence comes in a lot of different flavors, and it depends on context a lot. And you know, well, my ENTP debater is getting apparently low scores on reading comprehension tests, which is very strange because his verbal intelligence is fantastic. But you know, I just think it's that NI ignoring kicking in. Yeah, it's possible, Cloud, to dumb yourself down with substances, but it's probably not the substances you think. Um, no, listen. Like, okay, wait, Lynn, I want you to think about this for a second. I'm a professional debate coach who has coached a shit ton of debaters, okay? And I am telling you with no uncertainty that the best three debating types are ENTPs, INTPs, and INTJs. And it's kind of a toss up between them. That's just how it is. Sorry. INFJs are good. ENTJs are good. That's about it. Seriously. The rest of them, it's a struggle. Yeah, I've had NFPs. I mean, I'm not saying they can't be good. I had a policy debate. I've had two policy debate coaches who were NFPs, ENFPs. So I'm not denying the fact that you can't be TI polar and be good at debating. You can be TI polar and be good at debating. But look, one of those ENFP policy coaches was a kid I had coached personally since fourth grade, all the way through high school. So that's again, people look again. I am a professional debate coach. I've coached hundreds of debaters, and I, in the last few years at least, have typed them all. When I'm telling you that NTP, INTP, INTJ, and the second level, ENTJ and INFJ, are the best evaders. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I'm telling you from years of experience. I am a professional typer. I listen, I get it. I understand that the ENFPs can be successful. I'm not understating their capacity to be successful. But ENTP will get good fastest, and INFP close second. They both get good really fast. INTJs, it takes them a year or so, but then they get really good really fast because they've got to accumulate the knowledge base. I mean, that's possible, Theos Servinos, but I mean, the problem with that is you can see all my typings in typing videos and stuff if you want to watch my typing sessions. There's no reason to conclude I would use a different modality to type my own debaters, and it would harm me if I were using information that were false and making decisions and stuff. Besides which, I am habituated to disinterested calculus, so I'm pretty objective about such things. The fact that there might be such a bias is not a reason to believe that I've actually been impacted by such a bias. And the reality is I'm mostly biased about being unbiased. Since that's my primary frame, being right, being correct, not clinging to wrongnesses, then I'd say that argument has very few legs, You haven't established that the bias exists, which I might even concede it does, but you certainly haven't established that the bias impacted any of my thinking on the matter, especially when the clearly demonstrated bias towards being unbiased is so amply evident in the data we have, INFPs don't like to debate. It's not like they're necessarily bad at it. They just don't like the activity. It's too competitive. They have to argue things they don't feel are right sometimes, and they just don't like the activity. Some of the worst people at it, ISFJs are terrible at it. ISFPs are terrible at it. ESFPs aren't terrible, but they're pretty bad. ISTPs are always a step behind. It's like the ISTPs are always looking for the one answer that actually definitely wins all the time. There is no such thing in debate, I mean, ISFPs just don't like language. Too much talk. Too many words, You try to correct me all the time, Dark Phoenix. I don't know what you are, Cloud. What do I debate, Eric TWFP? I mean, I don't really debate anything. I'm not interested in debating, really. It's like everybody wants to debate me about things. I'm interested in conveying what I think is a correct and often nuanced position about things. It's like I'm confident and hopeful as well, I guess. Hopefully confident that, Rachel texted me this morning about wanting to have a conversation about, but not an argument about um, abortion because she disagrees with me on it, I guess. Well, I'm not worried about that conversation because, some people, a lot of couples will break up over things like that, over political differences. That's what I want to change. Our political differences don't matter that much. The reality is almost always more nuanced than either side, but it's like people don't like that answer, right? I seem to be familiar with all the derivative techniques, but you may learn a bit more integration techniques and techniques involving series like convergence tests. I don't know what you're talking about, Damien Dirk. I know you're talking to I Found Bacon, but that's some fancy talk that I just don't know. Criticism and debate are not the same. I can take criticism and shut my mouth. I don't need to reply to criticism. Well, that's true. The thing is, there's a difference in perspective about criticism. Some people see criticism as necessarily about them. Other people see criticism more as about the thing being presented. The more universal you are, the better your capacity to see the thing you're presenting as detached from yourself, and therefore it's not you being subject to criticism, it's the thing that's being said or whatever. I tend to default a lot to that assumption. That's part of being FI-polar as well, is that there's an assumption that everybody has the same kind of detachment from their words that I do. It's simply not the case, of course. I try to remember that as best I can consciously, but it's a workaround for FI. It's not actually putting myself in another person's shoes in any meaningful sense. Just practice your derivatives. If you don't understand that, you will learn them easily. If you know chain rule, product rule, and implicit differentiation, you can just use tables. Math talk. Oh my God, you guys, we are playing math talk. Sure, I'll do a mental experiment with you. Would I like to? Yes. Like I said, it's a complicated question. How people decide, the reason that we can't the reason that we can't ever completely predict things is because there's a confluence of enough different vectors in the decision-making process that it's not entirely, at least not yet, mechanically reducible. I don't think it ever will be, because it will always have a link to particular knowledge and particular experience. So well, Cloud, debaters in competition care about both equally, because being right means being right within the context of the arguments on the flow. It doesn't mean being right in any larger sense. And hopefully, if it's judged correctly, the person who's right in the context of the arguments on the flow is also the winner. So in other words, the job in debate is to be right. The frame of debate makes it such that you can be right within the frame of debate and not be right in a larger sense. And that's fine. That's what debate does. It says, hypocritical or hypercritical? Is that the experiment to see if I corrected the hyper thing? I mean, I didn't really correct it. I'm looking for clarification. Do you mean hypocritical or do you mean hypercritical? Because hypocritical would be an odd phenomenon. It would be like, I guess, just incredibly non-critical? Hypocritical? I'm a very anxious person and absolutely hate driving my car just far away. 70% of my anxiety is just getting there. Why don't you listen to live streams while you're driving there? That'll be much more pleasant if you listen to my live stream. Hypocritical. Oh. I didn't get it at all. This is an intuitive hard conversation. Yeah, it is. You got us, ESTP. We intuitards are chatting about stupid, cheap talk. Oh, I am all of a sudden exhausted again. It is nap time. I should just live stream myself napping. Huh. Okay, I'm gonna just live stream myself napping. Okay. Thanks, Valerie Clark. That's the nicest thing somebody said to me in a long time. Your tunes don't seem to suck. Okay, so I'm just gonna live stream myself napping. Okay. Good night, everyone. I've never done this before. Or maybe I have. I don't know. Oh, I've been in the raw room doing this before. I've napped in the raw room before, but I don't think I've ever live streamed myself napping. So, chat amongst yourselves, okay? I got my knee pillows, got my blanket. Wow, get a good view of me napping. Right. I wonder if I'll be able to nap knowing people are watching me or if I'll have nap stage fright. I guess we'll find out. Right. All right, everybody. Goodbye.